All right, let's dive in. Today we're going to be looking at transformation, divine delight, and spiritual gifts.
Wow, some pretty big concepts there.
We'll be drawing on some pretty fascinating sources too. We've got Isaiah, Psalms, Corinthians,
And John?
right, John, with of course that incredible story about turning water into wine at the wedding in Cana. You know, the one where
Oh, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Six stone jars.
exactly 6 huge stone jars, but we'll get to that a bit later.
Yeah, I think what really stands out to me in all of these readings is how they show just how powerful faith can be when it comes to transformation, both for ourselves and, for our communities.
It's like this ripple effect, right? So let's start with Isaiah 62. It's a really vivid passage talking about God's love for Jerusalem,
Mhm.
going from these descriptions of it being forsaken and desolate to becoming my delight and espoused. Quite the shift, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a radical change. But to really understand it, we need to look at the historical context.
Right, the Israelites had gone through so much exile, destruction.
They had lost their sense of who they were. So Isaiah's words, they were a beacon of hope.
In the midst of all that despair.
Exactly. He wasn't just saying, hey, God loves Jerusalem. It was more like, this is a promise, a covenant of restoration, not just for the nation, but for their relationship with God.
I mean, that really makes me think about times when maybe we feel forsaken or desolate ourselves.
Yeah.
What's it about this idea of experiencing that kind of radical transformation that speaks to you?
I think what really strikes me is this incredible shift from feeling like we're lacking something to suddenly experiencing this overwhelming abundance. And it's not just about passively receiving God's love.
It's about actually recognizing that we need to change.
Exactly. And then opening ourselves up to that love. It's being vulnerable, willing to be rebuilt. That's where the true transformation happens.
That's such a powerful way to look at it. It's not God doing something to us. It's about us being part of becoming something new.
That's it.
Okay, so moving on to Psalm 96. I almost get this feeling of celebration, like a call to action.
Almost like a global invitation to a divine party.
Yeah.
I mean, Psalm 96 is all about shouting from the rooftops about God's incredible deeds, his wondrous works. It's saying, look, faith isn't meant to be a secret. Share it. Celebrate it with everyone.
It's like seeing something amazing, like a breathtaking sunset, and just having to tell everyone about it.
Yes. That sense of awe and wonder, that's a key part of experiencing divine delight. It's not just about asking God for things. It's about being grateful, acknowledging where all that goodness comes from.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit now and look at 1 Corinthians 12. This is where Paul talks about all those different spiritual gifts.
He lists some pretty incredible abilities: wisdom, knowledge, faith, healing.
Miracles, the
It
love to
doesn't-
see.
The list goes on. But what's really fascinating is how Paul emphasizes that they all come from the same source, the same spirit.
So even though there's all this variety in the gifts themselves,
There's this unifying force behind them, and they're all meant to benefit the entire community,
it's like we're all part of this massive orchestra. Everyone's got their own instrument to play.
contributing to the symphony.
But it makes you wonder, what are our own unique gifts? And how do we even figure that out?
Now, that's a question that can lead to some serious soul searching. Some gifts, they're more obvious. Others, well, they might be quieter. You might discover them through your passions, things you're naturally good at.
It's about paying attention to what brings you joy, what energizes you,
Exactly. And then seeing how those qualities can be used to help others.
because that's what it's all about, right? Service. The passage makes it clear that these gifts aren't for us to hoard or brag about. They're for the good of everyone.
No competition, no comparing. It's about understanding that we each have something unique to offer. And when we put it all together,
We create something much bigger than ourselves.
that's the beauty of it.
All right, let's move on to John's gospel now and the story of the wedding at Cana. You know, the one where Jesus performs his first public miracle, turning water into wine.
Yes.
What details from that story really jump out at you?
Well, there's a ton of symbolism in this story. For me, those 6 stone jars, the ones used for Jewish purification rituals, they really stand out because they kind of hint that those old rituals, they're not enough anymore.
They're being replaced with something new.
Right. And then transforming the water into wine, it becomes more than just a physical act. It's this powerful metaphor representing a spiritual shift from the old ways to the new covenant brought by Jesus.
And the story's even got a little bit of humor in it. I mean, the head waiter, he has no idea where the wine came from.
And he's praising the bridegroom for saving the best wine for last.
It's great.
It shows how Jesus didn't need recognition or applause. He just quietly revealed his glory through acts of service and transformation.
It makes you wonder, where do we see those kinds of transformations happening in our own lives? Maybe not on the scale of water into wine, but those moments where the ordinary suddenly becomes extraordinary.
I think it's important to remember that transformation often happens gradually.
It unfolds slowly.
Yeah. And it can show up in small ways, like letting go of a bad habit, forgiving someone, making choices that align with our values.
They seem small, but
They have the potential to create these ripples of change, affecting not only our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us,
like the butterfly effect, one tiny action
setting off this chain reaction.
leading to massive changes. It's an amazing thought. Maybe we should just pause here for a moment. Let these ideas sink in before we go any further.
Yeah, good idea.
There's so much to think about with these readings. Something just occurred to me, though. We haven't even mentioned that this miracle, it happens at a wedding.
Oh, you're right. That is such a significant detail. I mean, weddings, they're all about new beginnings, joy, celebration.
The perfect setting for Jesus to, kick off his public ministry, give everyone a glimpse of what he's capable of.
Yeah, like he's saying, hey, this is just the start. Get ready for something incredible.
I like that. And you know what? When we think about how Isaiah describes Jerusalem as espoused to God,
It adds a whole other layer to the wedding imagery. It's not just a metaphor, it's pointing towards that new covenant.
the ultimate wedding feast described in Revelation, where God and humanity are, totally united.
It's mind-blowing when you make those connections.
So we've got this theme of transformation, this idea of divine delight, and this overarching wedding imagery. And then Paul comes in with the concept of spiritual gifts in Corinthians.
Right.
It's like a call to action, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like he's saying, hey, not only does God love you and want you to change, but he's given you these special abilities to help him out. It's an invitation to discover what those gifts are and use them for something bigger than ourselves.
Like we've all got these superpowers.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exciting, but it can also feel a bit intimidating. How are we supposed to figure out what our gifts are? I'm not exactly parting the Red Sea or speaking in tongues over here.
I get it. It's a common feeling. And, not all gifts are that dramatic. Some are more subtle, like woven into who we are, the things we love, the things we're good at, without even trying.
Okay, so think about what brings you joy, what you naturally excel at, what gives you energy.
That's a good place to start. Those could be clues pointing to your unique spiritual gifts.
So say someone loves to bake. Does that mean their spiritual gift is making cookies for church events?
Maybe. Or maybe it's about how that baking creates a sense of community, brings people together. Or it could be something else entirely. The important thing is to be open to the possibilities and, ask God for guidance. How can those passions, those talents be used for his purposes?
So it's not just about the activity itself.
It's the motivation behind it, the impact it has.
It's about finding that sweet spot where our passions meet the needs of the world. But it can feel overwhelming. What if we miss our calling? What if we use our gifts in the wrong way?
It's natural to worry about that. But remember, God isn't a micromanager. He gives us free will, invites us to work with him. It's a journey, not a destination.
There are going to be bumps along the way.
Of course. That's how we learn.
So we try things out, see what feels right, and trust that God is leading us.
Yes. And don't forget about your community. Talking to people you trust, mentors, spiritual advisors, they can offer so much support and encouragement as you figure out your gifts.
That's such a good point. We don't have to do this alone. I mean, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Transformation, divine delight, spiritual gifts, even wedding planning. It's amazing how it all ties
It
together.
really shows the depth of these sacred texts. And we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover.
Let's go back to that image of the water being turned into wine. Water, it's so ordinary, so essential for life, yet we take it for granted most of the time.
That's true. We don't often stop to think about how important it is.
But Jesus, he saw its potential.
He saw something extraordinary. And that shift in perspective, that's what's so inspiring. If something as basic as water can be transformed into something so joyful, so life-giving, imagine what's possible for us, for our communities.
Wow, that's a powerful question to think about.
It is. And it's one I hope stays with you long after this deep dive is over.
That idea, turning the ordinary into something extraordinary, it really sticks with me. It's like this reminder that there's potential everywhere, even in the things we see every day.
It's all about perspective, isn't it?
Mm.
Seeing those possibilities even when they're hidden. It makes me think about those servants at the wedding, just diligently filling up those giant jars with water.
They had no idea what was about to happen.
Right. But their obedience, their willingness to serve, it was essential for the miracle to happen.
It shows how important it is to just show up, do the work, even when we don't understand the big picture.
It's a lesson in faith, in trust. Sometimes we're just called to focus on the small things, trusting that God will use them for something bigger.
And it's funny, those jars, they were originally meant for ceremonial washing.
Focused on outward purity.
But Jesus, he transforms them into these vessels overflowing with the best wine.
It's that shift from external rituals to internal transformation that's at the heart of the gospel.
It's not about following rules or looking good on the outside.
Real change comes from letting God's love work on us, from the inside out.
And then that inner transformation, it spills out into everything else, our relationships, our work,
Our creativity.
even how we understand God's delight in us. It all comes back to that idea of going from lack to abundance.
It's a change in how we see ourselves, recognizing that we're already loved, already worthy. And when we realize that, it frees us to be more authentic, to embrace those gifts.
And to give back to the world. Okay, but think about those servants for a minute. If they had tasted the water before Jesus transformed it, they probably would have thought it was just plain water. So how do we know? How do we recognize those moments when something ordinary has the potential to become miraculous?
That is a deep question. And I don't think there's one easy answer.
Yeah.
It's about being more aware of ourselves and God's presence in our lives.
Paying attention to those little nudges, those moments of inspiration.
Yes, those feelings of peace, of joy, even when things are tough.
It's like trusting that voice inside us that says, hey, pay attention, there's something special here.
And being open to the unexpected. Willing to step outside our comfort zones, trusting that God's at work, even when we don't get it.
Like we're all part of this incredible dance of transformation, each playing a role in creating something beautiful and new.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. It reminds us that transformation doesn't happen in isolation. We're connected, and our individual journeys contribute to something much larger.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything specific you hope our listeners will take away from this conversation?
I think the most important thing to remember is this. Never underestimate the power of transformation. It's happening all around us, inside us, through us. So embrace the journey, be open to surprises, and trust that God's working to make all things new.
What a beautiful and hopeful message. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. It's been a truly inspiring conversation.
It's been my pleasure. May we all continue to seek those moments of transformation and divine delight in our lives.